Hello, everybody. Welcome to Kitabeclub. I think, like always, third time is a charm, and all good things take time. And at the same time, in today's session, we are going to talk about intelligence of your own mind, your body, how you can go to the next level. Like, rather, not just next level, the zone of genius, your Einstein time, and a lot more. For some of you, those who haven't read the book, The Big Leap, it might seem like an alien concept, but trust me, by the end of the session, when you hear Gay Hendricks, you will be like, okay, this is something I should be knowing, rather, this is something I should do at the instant. So, without any further ado, let me add my guest, and from therein, we'll take forward. Just give me 1 second. We're facing some technical difficulties adding our guest for the day, and I think so he should be here any minute. Let's just see. Meanwhile, Gay Hendricks is a psychologist, writer, and teacher in the field of personal growth, relationships, and body intelligence. It is always said that look at the brighter picture, and he has been doing this for last so many years. So, by the time my guest joins in, I'd like to tell you a simple story about his book, particularly The Big Leap. If you look at the book cover, you will see there is a small fish bowl from wherein the fish is trying to jump into the bigger bowl. This is all of us. I do see my guest here. Let me just add him here. Okay. Okay. Hello, good morning, sir. So I'm not able to hear you yet. I'm not able to hear you. I think so. You're muted at this point. Okay. I'm not able to hear you, sir. I think so. We can take a minute. That's perfectly all right. But then I'm not able to hear you.
Good. Well, I'm happy to be with you. And have you already introduced me?
Yes, yes. I just started that. There is a lot more I want to talk to you about. Because to be very honest, this I wanted to speak to you in person in the end. But at the same time, I'll start. This was a personal journey of mine. 4 years back, I was on a crossroad, and there I was contemplating that what career option I should go for. I'm a chartered accountant and company secretary by profession. That means I'm from the field of finance, and I was on major crossroad. What option to choose? Which part of my career to go forward? And I was in real big mess. And one of my friends recommended this particular book of yours to me, and 4 years, I have never looked back. I have never looked back. I have gone from, I would say, that a journey which starts at the grassroots level, and something which I really enjoy. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for accepting our invite, and thank you so much for writing this book, because this is more like a guide to me. This is something I feel every person in the world should have, because we all want to be like this small fish who wants to jump from a smaller fish bowl to the larger fish bowl. So thank you so much, sir, for the big leap.
Well, my pleasure. It's I'm just communicating with my assistant now, who is helping
Yeah.
me find you. Um, so, may I just speak for a few minutes
Sure.
directly to you all about the main concepts in the Big Leap?
Yes, sir. We would love to hear it from you.
Okay. By the way, what part of the world are you in tonight?
India, sir. India, Pune.
In Pune. Okay. I have a good friend who lives in Pune named Karan Guljani. I don't know if you've met him.
Oh, wow. Wow. So I guess sometimes when you come down to Pune, I'm certainly starting in queue to meet you.
Good. Well, the two big concepts in the Big Leap are, number one, what I call the upper limit problem. And the
Yes.
upper limit problem is something I want everybody in the world to know about, because I've been now in 170 countries or something like that around the world. And all of them, everybody, everywhere has some version of the upper limit problem. And the upper limit problem is when you sabotage yourself when things are going better, or when you're just about ready to make a breakthrough, or sometimes right after you've made a breakthrough. I had that just happen to a good friend of mine who had a huge multi-million-dollar stock market win, and then the next day was out celebrating, riding his bicycle fast, and crashed it and ended up in the hospital. So one day he's getting a few $1,000,000, whee, next day crash. So that's a classic example of the upper limit problem. I first noticed it some years ago. I was overweight and I was on a diet, and I did great for the first month, and I lost about a pound a day. And I was feeling better than I had. I was within sight of my goal, and so none of my clothing fit anymore. I had to go out and buy some new pants and things, and so everything was just going great. And I was walking past in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I was walking down the street, and I looked through the window of an ice cream store. And in that ice cream store was a family of 4 people having this gigantic, what we call over here a banana split, where you split a banana and then you put 3 kinds of ice cream on it. And I haven't had lunch yet, so I'm describing this in great detail for my own pleasure. But I saw this family of 4, and I just lost it. I went in and I said, I got to have one of those. So I ate and ate and ate for about 20 minutes, and I felt high as a kite. I was just, all that sugar going through me. And then about 20 minutes later, I got the worst stomach ache of my life. I actually was doubled over on the street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and people were saying, "Are you okay, sir? Are you okay, sir?" And I'd never felt anything like that. And so there I went. One day, one moment, I'm feeling fabulous, walking along, feeling better than I'd felt in years. Next minute, I'm sabotaging myself. Fortunately, I was able to get right back on. I learned the lesson the first time. And so I did it again in smaller ways, but I finally got down to where I wanted to get. And now, many years later, I'm still fit. So the upper limit problem can happen in much less dramatic ways. They don't have to be a stomach ache or a bicycle crash. What they usually are, most people's worry thoughts are an upper limit problem. Here's why. Check out your worry thoughts for a few days or a few weeks, and you will notice, I promise you this, you will notice that most of the things you worry about are things that you have absolutely no control over or no possibility of changing. Many of the things we worry about are things like, does somebody like me? Or I wonder if somebody knows that, ... that it's a lot of worry thoughts about things that are unchangeable. I used to notice that about that time I was trying to lose the weight, that almost all my worry thoughts with regard to my weight were about things I couldn't control or change. And those worry thoughts keep you from focusing on the things that you actually can change. So do me a favor and just notice your worry thoughts for a week or two, and notice that most of them are just based on fear, that they're not based on any kind of reality. So that brings me to the subject of fear. And fear is an important part of the upper limit problem, because what happens is good things are happening, like on my diet, I was feeling really good, or my multimillionaire guy who crashed his bicycle, he was feeling good, and then a fear happens down inside us. And I'll explain a few of those fears in a moment. But the main thing is to think of it as a fear that arises because you're now in a zone you haven't been in for a while, or maybe you haven't ever been in for a while. Like with my friend who crashed his bike, he had never been that wealthy before. He was doing okay, but suddenly an influx of a few $1,000,000, that took him into a zone that he was unfamiliar with. And boom, there came that upper limit problem up to haunt him. So take note of the thing that happens. You start to feeling better, you get scared, and then the upper limit occurs. You start worrying about stuff you can't control, or you have a slip and fall, or you burn the stuff you're cooking on, like I did the other day, because I was so busy thinking about a client and a problem that I was working with her on that I burned my mushrooms that I was sauteing for breakfast. My favorite breakfast, by the way, is a couple of hard-cooked eggs and a plate of fresh mushrooms. That's me at my primo breakfast.
Wow.
Yes. And so I want to get into the second thing. I've laid out the sequence of events that happens with an upper limit problem. You're doing better, you get scared, you hit the upper limit switch, and you start worrying, or you start an argument with your mate, or there are a number of them that I detail in the upper limit, but you'll be familiar with them. Most of
Yes.
them involve worry thoughts, or things like starting arguments or participating in arguments, or physical things like feeling a sore throat or something like that. That was one of the ways I first noticed it. Also, after the weight thing, I had been afraid of public speaking. Now I've been on Oprah and given 2,500
Yeah.
seminars, but there was a point in my life where I was afraid of public speaking. And I was trying to learn to give these little 2-minute speeches and 5-minute speeches. And I got up the morning I was going to give my first speech, and I had a sore throat. And so I used that as an excuse. Oh, I got a sore throat. I can't, but fortunately, I'm married to a very brilliant wife. And my genius
Indeed.
wife said to me, are you sure your throat is really sore, or are you just afraid of going to give that talk? I have learned that in about 100% of the time, my wife is right about everything. And so, but she really got it right there, and I said, okay. And, interestingly enough, after I started being with it a little bit and being with the fear, the sore throat went away. So what I did was, with a little coaching from Katie, the first thing I said was, I was so scared of giving this speech this morning that I gave myself a sore throat. And immediately the audience was just right there with me, because, almost everybody has felt fear of public speaking, and almost everybody has given themselves some kind of a physical malady or something, but it didn't have anything to do with being sick. It was just because maybe you were scared of talking to
Yeah.
somebody or in some way. So the two big concepts are the zone of genius and the upper limit problem. And to me, the genius zone material is secondary to the upper limit problem. You need to make a commitment to getting into your genius zone. But what you then need to do is get through your upper limit problem so that you can start living in that genius zone all the time. So take a breath with me for a moment. As you probably know, I teach breathing. I have a book called Conscious
Yes.
Breathing. And 25 years ago, it's been a bestseller in the breathing world for the last 25 years. So take a couple of big conscious breaths with me. Nice big belly breaths, not just the kind that inflate your chest, but nice big, like you're being at a yoga class and doing some
Yeah.
pranayama. Yes, just take a few easy breaths. We've been up in our heads for a while. Now let's come down into our bodies even more. As you move through your upper limit problems, you'll begin to be able to answer this question, which I think is a question that every human being needs to ask themselves. What is my true genius in life? And what do I most love to do? What is my true genius in life opens up a big dialogue with yourself. So I encourage you to go ahead and ask that just as we speak here. What is my real genius in life? And the answer to that will often come along with the answer to a second question. hmm, what do I most love to do? What do I most love to do is a key to discovering your genius. I discovered that when I first began to work through my upper limit problems, I began to ask, what do I really want to do with my life? And I sat with that for a long time. And I realized there was only one thing in the work world that I really love to do. And that's exactly what you and I are doing right now. We are talking, a group of sincere individuals are together to talk about the deeper things of life, to talk about our feelings, to talk about how to deal with our everyday emotions. We want to talk about how to create better relationships. And I realized that's the only thing I love to do. And at the time, I was a university professor at a major university, the University of Colorado. And as you can imagine, the university did not want me to teach that kind of thing. I was a professor in a regular counseling psychology program where I needed to teach, things like research. And I, of course, had to teach all the clinical things like, how to work with people. But I spent about 90% of my time at the university teaching things that were not in my genius zone. So that was a big opening for me, a very big learning. And the reason it was so important is because to me, to really thrive in life, human beings need to have an eye on our genius. We need to be focusing all the time on doing more and more of what we most love to do. And there I was, only getting to do 10% of the time what I most love to do. Fortunately, about that time, a rising young star of a talk show host, Oprah Winfrey, read our book on relationships and invited us to come on her show. And after that, I didn't need to be a university professor anymore. And so what I've spent since Oprah, which was 32 years ago, first time we were on there, I've spent my whole life doing what I most love to do. And so since I love to do it, it's not even anything I'd call work. And so what I want for all of you is to move through those fears that are in your way and establish yourself in your genius zone. And my new book, by the way, is called The Genius Zone. So it's kind of like a sequel to The Big Leap. So let me put in a plug for that right away. So I want to pause right there and kind of see what kind of time we have left and seeing what kind of dialogue we want to have, Shweta.
Oh, so 100%. We would love to hear about the Genius Zone because there are a couple of questions also. And my personal question is also similar to the question which is asked that, once you find this is something you enjoy doing and you start doing it, but is it okay that a couple of years down the line you feel bored at a times or you want to change that, what you have liked, say 7 years, 10 years down, like back?
See, this is really important. I appreciate you for bringing that
Mm,
up so much. To me, your commitment to your genius has to be a commitment of the heart as well as the mind. What
okay.
I think is your path to your genius has to be regarded as a spiritual path. And just like you might pledge yourself to being a daily meditator, I've been meditating every day. I learned TM about 50 years ago, actually, and I've been doing that ever since. And so to me, it's a spiritual path as well as something. See, I think genius should also show up in the real world, in the material world.
Okay.
I think each of us, to really feel satisfied as human beings, need to be committed to our own genius, but we also need to be committed to sharing our genius with other people in a way that makes
Mm,
their lives better. I dedicated my life back, gosh, almost 50 years ago now. I dedicated my life to increasing my creativity and my abundance and my creativity every day of my life as I inspire other people to do the same thing. So part of my life purpose is to not only fulfill my own destiny as a human being, but also make a contribution to other people too. And to me, that's life at its best. May I say a few words more about the zone of genius?
Definitely, sir.
Okay.
Yes, definitely, sir.
I apologize for being late, by the way. I was having trouble finding you guys, so I realized I ate
Yes.
up some of my time by being late. So I
No,
hope
no, no,
you'll
so perfectly all
forgive me
right.
for going on a little bit longer here.
No.
So the key to your genius zone goes through the pathway of finding out what you most love to do and what you can make the biggest contribution to other people by doing. And it doesn't
Okay.
matter if it's a huge thing or a small thing, like Abraham Maslow, one of my mentors way back 70 years ago, he said that it doesn't matter if it's creating a beautiful symphony or creating a beautiful soup for your family. It's the same
Hmm.
thing. It's exactly the same thing. And interestingly enough, my wife, Katie, um, loves to make Indian food. Here in America, we have blessed, like 11 miles from me, I have a wonderful Indian restaurant, and we go there all the time. But when we're not there, Katie's specialty is to make Indian dishes. And as I watch her, she has about 50 different spices. And as I watch her make this, it's like, it really is like a symphony conductor conducting a symphony, because she'll put in something and then she'll put in something else until she turns into this masterpiece. And so whether you're focusing on something relatively small or something relatively big, what the important ingredient is do you love to do it? And does it invoke your creativity? Does it
Okay.
make you do something different maybe one day that you didn't do the next day? That's a key, because we need to keep our creativity fired up throughout life. Katie and I wrote a relationship book called Conscious Loving Ever After. And the first chapter in it is all about creativity, because I know you're not at midlife yet, but once you get up 35, 40, 45 years old, you will find that creativity takes on a greater and greater importance, especially in your relationships, because both people have to keep their creativity fired up rather than going through the same motions all the time. And so one of the big challenges in life and in relationships certainly is to keep that vivid edge, that lively edge to things. And because it's the actual felt experience of the flow of love between two people that really makes the difference in the relationship. So take another breath or two with me and begin to ask yourselves a couple of more what I call genius wonder questions, because asking them will help you bring forth your genius. Ask yourself, what do I do that when I'm doing it, I don't feel like I'm working? When I do it, what part of my work that when I do it, I don't even feel like I'm working? And another question is, if money were not a consideration, what would I do all day to express myself? If money were not a consideration, if people were just paying me to sit around and do whatever the heck I wanted, what would I engage with? What would I put my passions into? So those are genius wonder questions that will help you invite forth your genius. Because in my view, now I've worked with about 20,000 individuals and I think last time we counted about 1,200 corporate executives and about 4,500 couples. So we've worked with all sorts of different clients and all sorts of different mediums. And one thing we've really discovered is the happiest ones of all those people are the ones that are engaged in life with their creativity, and they're doing something that makes a contribution. So I want to leave you on that as far as your genius zone is occurring. Just the questions are the important things. Asking yourself the big questions like, what do I most love to do? And what do I do that doesn't feel like work? And what would I like to be doing all day long if I didn't have to pay my rent? Those kind of questions will expand you into your genius zone very rapidly. That's how I got there. Then, of course, it takes commitment like everything else in life. So here's a good commitment that I would love for you to adopt. I commit to bringing forth more and more of my genius every day of my life. I commit to bringing forth more and more of my genius every day of my life. That's a commitment that I do my best to live into every day of my life. And so far at age 77, it's working great.
Awesome. When that is insightful. I could listen on and on to your perspective on the zone of genius. But sir, this is something I've experienced after reading your book. But before that, being a positive person or being an optimistic person, I've always heard that optimism to a certain level, positive approach to a certain level is fine. But later on, sometimes you need to be practical. But I feel positive has, no bounties. What would you add on that?
Well, let me give you an example. I mentioned commitment a
Yeah.
few moments ago. Commitment is incredibly important for getting you underway. But what will help you sustain the journey is getting good at recommitment. When you've wandered off the path and gotten into some negativity or created
Yes.
an argument or lost some money or whatever, it's very tempting to kind of stay in that despair state for a while. But like when my daughter was little, she wanted, for her 6th birthday, she wanted to take a horse riding lesson. And so I took her to the horse riding stables. And I got to tell you, I'm scared of horses. I don't like them. I don't like the way they smell. But she was just crazy about horses. So I took her to the stables and I stood on the sidelines and watched her take her first lesson. And when the trainer got her up on the back of the horse and they started trotting off, and they got about 30 feet and Amanda fell off onto the ground. Boom.
Oh,
And her trainer made sure she was okay and then put her right back up on the horse and they took off again. So recommitment, because about a minute later, she fell off again and her trainer got her back up on the horse and they took off again. And it turned out that within probably 15 minutes, Amanda was trotting or walking along on the horse just fine because she'd figured out how to stay in balance. You should have seen me learn to ski. I grew up in Florida, so I never saw a snowflake until I was in my 20s for sure. And I tried to learn to ski. And if you've ever learned to ski, it's a good thing to do when you're 6 years old because you're close to the ground. But trying to learn as a 6 foot, 180 pounder, I crashed to the snow many times. And so getting back up on your feet and going again, crucial importance. Many of you have taken a long distance airplane ride, and if you do, the airplane has an automatic pilot. And so if you get on the airplane in Mumbai and you're going to Los Angeles, the pilot doesn't steer it all the way. They plug in the destination of Los Angeles. And here's the way the automatic pilot works. It beams in on Los Angeles, and then it has a program that says, we're drifting a little to the right, correct to the left. We're drifting a little to the left, correct to the right. And it does this in microscopic, tiny moments where it probably does it 100 times, 1,000 times an hour, maybe making little tiny, every time it's recommitting to the destination. Now, here's the punchline. That means that if you get on the plane in Mumbai and get off in LA, you got there in an airplane that was being wrong 99% of the time because it was willing to recommit to the right goal. So forgive yourself for being wrong, forgive yourself for wandering off the destination. Just get good at recorrecting and settling into your commitment over and over again.
Wow. I mean, the anecdotes you share have made me understand that wherever I am or wherever I'm going, if I'm drifting from my path, I need to be recommitted to what I have desired to be. And
Yeah.
that's a wonderful way of connecting, because through your stories, these are like, okay, this is what something I need to remember. This is something amazing. In your book, you have mentioned it that as individuals, when we are starting with our journey, we absorb a certain amount of goodness, and then the fear comes into picture. Or also, it might happen that since a lot of us are in the public domain, it comes with certain amount of criticism. So, how do you handle this? The fear that comes in, breathing does help, because when I started your session, my headphones were not getting connected. The internet was playing hit or miss. And there were a lot of things which were going wrong. But because I had the book in mind and I had the book in hand, I started breathing. I took 5 deep breaths and I said, come what may, this is something I want to do. And I would try that again for the fourth time. And then that brought me here. But sometimes criticisms do affect, and negativity does take you to another level. How do you handle that? How do you again come back stronger?
I have a radical way of dealing with criticism. At the same time, I take it incredibly personally, and I let go of taking it personally all at the same time. I ask myself, is there anything positive I can learn from that? Or is this person just working off some negativity? Because a lot of criticism doesn't have anything to do with you.
True. Yes.
It's, but I think the important thing is to open up to learning anything positive you can from criticism. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be here without a particular piece of criticism. The summer I met my wife in 1980, I wrote a little book called Learning to Love Yourself, and which has been a little bestseller now for 42 years. Katie and I just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary, by the way. So we've been at this for a while, and so I wrote this little book called Learning to Love Yourself, and it was a modest, it was selling maybe 5 or 10,000 copies a month, and then a guy in a magazine wrote a terrible review of it. He was a guy that hated self-help books, and he hated, like I forget who the other person he hated. Oh, Wayne Dyer. He was another popular
Mm,
self-help book author. Anyway, this guy
mm,
wrote this review that he just said, oh, these self-help books, they're going to poison everybody. Everybody should just go to a licensed psychoanalyst. Don't try to make any self-improvements on your own. And I found later that he had written a whole book called Psychobabble, which was about his hatred for the self-help book movement. Anyway, he obviously had an axe to grind. But at first, I wanted to take it personally. I said, okay. But then my publisher called about a month later and said, Gay, what are you doing out there? The book is selling 2 or 3 times what it usually sells. We've got a little bestseller on our hands here. And I said, well, the only thing I can think of I've been doing differently is I got a terrible review. And she said, well, get more of them, because it turned the book overnight into a little bestseller, because all the things he was talking about that he didn't like, the audience liked, because one of the things he really hated in the review was he said, here's Dr. Hendricks, a well-known, respectable university professor, talking about his own feelings and anger and sadness and fear. Well, that was the whole point of the book, was I was talking about how to learn to love my own feelings and how. So he kind of missed the whole point, but he made it a bestseller. So I say, accept the possibility that every little bit of criticism is going to be for the good. That's why Bob Dylan once said, there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Wow. What a way of looking at it. I mean, what a great story. And this is something which I would say that it is worth $1,000,000. Like what you said, makes me realize that everything that comes your way is just a perception or the way of looking at it. Incredible, sir. So, a little secret buddy tells us that you are writing a memoir. You're writing a memoir, you're working on it.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Yes. So when can we expect it? What is that we can find in the book? Would you like to share something about it?
Yes. I'm writing a memoir. It's called Loving Life, Tales of My Wondrous Journey. And it's got things in it that'll make you laugh and things that'll make you cry. I talk a lot about my very unusual family that I come from. And I learned a lot about being a therapist from living in my family because, like, my grandmother that lived next door wouldn't speak to either of my uncles, and there was all sorts of drama. I'm sure you don't have any family dramas in India, but we do over
Oh, we
here.
do have a lot. We do have a lot. Big families and big dramas.
I understand. Um, so, and it's got stories of some of the amazing people I've met, like Elvis Presley and Jimi
Yes, sir.
Hendrix and other unusual folks like that. And it'll be out, I hope, later this year. So, what do you call it? Keep your fingers crossed. Yes, cross your
Yes,
fingers.
yes, yes. I am waiting for it because by the time I read The Big Leap, I bought this book as an ebook on Kindle. I have a paperback here. I have a paperback in my office, and I recommend it all the time. So I'm waiting to take that journey with you to know how your life was like. And at the same time, sir, I this is going to be my last question. I know I asked you a lot, but then this is the last question I want to ask. The Big League came out a couple of years back, and 2020-22, and also with your years of experience, have you seen any change in people with regard to the upper limit problem or the zone of genius, or it's still the same? Like from so many years until today, is there a change or paradigm shift in people or their perception, or we all are like just the same?
I have seen a big change. I've seen people
Okay.
spotting their upper limits faster than they did before. That's the key variable is how quick and nimble are you at spotting when you're in an upper limit problem and recommitting to your genius. So don't feel bad about slipping off the path. Just measure how quickly you can get back on the path again and grade yourself that way. Another thing too, Shweta, by the way, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Shweta?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Shweta.
Sweta. Okay. Um, Another thing I've noticed is that the language of the big leap and the genius zone and the zone of genius are gradually getting into mainstream media.
Yes.
Like we had a famous, terrible incident the other night where a big actor slapped a comedian, in the Oscars. And it was the biggest upper limit problem ever seen. Hundreds of millions of people watched a person ruin getting the biggest award of the night,
Yes.
because the guy
Yes.
that slapped the actor then won the biggest actor award. So at the same time, he destroyed the good feeling of himself and a whole bunch of other people at a night where it could have been pure celebration for him. Now half the people hate him. So
Wow.
that's, oh, and what tickled me, made me happy was afterwards people were talking about it on the internet as an upper limit problem and that he needed to read The Big Leap and things like that, and nothing can make an author happier, you know, than seeing
True,
some
true.
television pundit talk about his book. And so I got in this 50 years ago to help people learn really significant things about their lives in a big way. And I remember when I was a graduate student at Stanford, one of my professors said, "What do you want to do? Do you want to be a university professor, or do you want to be in private practice as a therapist?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to be a university professor, but I'm going to be a different kind of thing. I'm going to look for how to get these things out to the public. You know, I'm going to look for how to put them on television even." And at the time, nobody had ever done anything like that. And I remember my professor going, you know, we don't do that sort of thing here, you know, and in the ivory tower, they call it, you know, so you're supposed to stay removed from real life in the university. But heck, to me, if we're going to do all this fabulous research, we need to get it out to the people. So that's why I started doing classes on cable TV and started being on Oprah and things like
Cool.
that, was to help people learn things that they might have to spend thousands of dollars in therapy to learn. You know, why not learn it from a $10 book?
Totally. I totally believe that. And
I'm going to jump in and say here, I'm just looking at the clock for the first time. I've been in my genius zone here for a while, and I realized I have a ride waiting for me to take me to another meeting on
definitely,
the other
definitely,
side of
sir.
town. So I'm going to
Yes,
have to
yes.
come in for a landing.
Definitely, sir. I have taken the double the time of what I have asked for. And like what you said, I enjoy this so much that I've forgotten to look at the cloud. I would just conclude this by saying that this is something everybody should read. This is something with the help of which I have taken big leap in my own life, and I can't thank you enough, sir, for writing this personally for me and from the rest of the world. Also, because there are so many comments which are saying that it has changed the way they look at life. It has changed the way they are, taking forward their journey. And thank you so much from all of us.
Yes, well, thank you so much. And let me invite you at another occasion, maybe have everybody read The Genius Zone, and I'll come back and talk to you again.
Definitely, definitely, sir. That would be a big, big uh, thing we will be looking at forward at.
Well, many blessings to you. Great to talk to you.
Thank you, sir. Namaste from India.